you have to register with the federal government, with our Justice Department. And they are from every country. In terms of success, I mean, we don't, they have success mostly, in lobbying in the United States at least. It's mostly what you stop and not what you get actively, proactively. So, right now there's obviously a good deal going on in terms of Russian interest. But, that cuts a lot of ways so that, the Congress is already voting for maintaining the sanctions that we have. So I imagine that they're both foreign companies and U.S. companies who would like us to either relax or continue sanctions that we have. And for the most part, any of those who are opposing sanctions have lost. I've had personal experience in the past. We were lobbying on an oil issue, and there were foreign interests, Japanese interests, other interests in East Asia, who put a lot of money into lobbying, into hiring a lobbyist in the United States. They actually tried to hide it, and fortunately, they tried to hide it by creating a company that was allegedly a United States company, and that company was spending a lot of money. But again, when you looked underneath the records of the lobbyist, who separately from being a foreign agent, even though he was and didn't register, but even though he just registered to lobby on behalf of his own company that had been set up, a shell, a fake company. Both the media and the Justice Department got interested, and so the lobbyist quickly registered as a foreign agent, and that we discovered it through looking at our filings, because the filings and the reports can be found online. Foreign lobbying by countries and companies is very common here in Washington, D.C., and it's also very transparent. You can find all of the forms online. You can see who's doing what reasonably. Obviously, you're not following them, but you can see who's hired whom, how much they're paying, why they're paying him, what they're paying him to do. So hopefully that helps you.
We're also interested in the role of think tanks in the lobbying process. So because in Ukraine we haven't the classical think tanks and dialogue between business or business association and power, it works like direct work. So what is the role of think tanks in United States, in DC? You as classical lobbyist, what is the most interesting story about your cooperation with think tanks? I ask about this because mostly of Ukrainian and Russia clients, they want to buy conference in United States and conference with think tanks, and they think that it's really lobbying, but it doesn't work. So what is the role of this organization?
Okay, and when you say, just so I understand, it is think tanks? Did I understand you correctly?
Yes, the role of think tanks in the lobbying process in United States.
But think tanks I don't understand right now.
Think tank, like Atlantic Council, Hudson, Berkeley, and others. Analytical structures.
Yeah, I mean, So by and large, they're not very active as organizations in the lobbying process. I haven't come across them. They are a good source of information and reliable information, usually. And, depending upon your point of view, they are very useful that way, Kateryna.
Mm-hmm.
But in the lobbying process, I don't see them.
Who take part the main role in lobbying process? So it's lawyers or it's lobbying companies, because also some Ukrainian clients understand that lobbying it's work only for lawyers or only for lobbying companies. So who is the main person in this process?
Okay. Yeah. No, not mainly lawyers. Although there certainly are lawyers, there are people like me who, are not lawyers. You don't have to be. You don't need to be. There's no particular advantage to it, other than if you're dealing with our executive branch and the agencies there that regulate various businesses and other activities, like environmental regulations and the like. It can get very complicated. You very often need people who are lawyers to be able to parse through, to get through all of the regulations. So the people who are involved they cover the gamut. A number of them are people who used to work as staff for Capitol, for Congress, and others are people who never worked on Capitol Hill. But for the most part, most lobbyists have had some experience working on Capitol Hill. Mm-hmm. I came from New York down to Washington, D.C. I was a teacher. I wanted to get involved in politics, and I happened to be able to get a job working for a senator. I did that for 4 years, and then left, and a few years later became a lobbyist. So, mm-hmm. I mean, I tell any of the, I work with students a lot, and I tell them that, if anybody, whether they're interested in health and they're a nurse or they're a doctor or they're a, from in the computer world and all of the .com world. Those people are all doing lobbying. In general, the more you have congressional Hill experience, the better off you're going to be in knowing how to lobby and when to lobby.
Mm-hmm. And what is the casual term of lobbying contract? For example, if we have some industry in Ukraine and we wanna to lobby in interest of this big company in the United States and do some regulatory policy for Ukrainian products, what term we need to sign the contract? So it's 1 year, 2 years, or 4 years, and what's the prices of this contract? For example, with top lobbying companies, so price of work of company and budget for communication.
Yeah, most lobbying contracts are for a year and usually can be canceled either on 30 days notice or less. And very often the fees would be anywhere between $5,000 a month and, the sky's the limit, $5,000 a month to $20,000 a month. I would say in foreign interest lobbying that you're normally talking about $10,000 a month or more, and that does not include expenses. Most firms add expenses on top of that. What expenses? We can't pay for the lunch of any member of Congress or any staff person. We can't pay for a bottle of water for anybody. So there are expenses, but they're not particularly, you know, serious. The big expense would be flying back and forth from Ukraine to the United States.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You can limit those. I had a client, not in, not a foreign client, but in Hawaii,
Mm-hmm.
which is further away than most people, although probably just a little bit less than you folks are from Washington, D.C. And the contract said that they wouldn't pay for any of my travel to Hawaii. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, a contract is whatever you negotiate. It also involves not just lobbying with the officials. Lobbying includes perhaps putting advertisements online or in newspapers, particularly newspapers that are read in Washington, D.C. So there's a lot of aspects to lobbying, and that might be, you know, in addition to the lobbying dollars.
Mm-hmm. We have also one question from our colleague from Ministry of Energy of Ukraine. It's Andriy. So Andriy, your question.
Hi, Andriy.
Thank you, Howard. I ask you about maybe a very simple question. Is there some kind of responsibility for lobbying company in the successful result? Maybe it depends from some kind of win.
The thing about lobbying is that you have to have a lot of patience because getting a successful result. I teach lobbying, and what the academic profession says is that, you know, used to say, I don't know what they're saying now, is that lobbying from start to success would take a minimum of 3 years. I think it's probably longer than that now. But sometimes it depends how you define success. Again, if you're trying to stop something, you may be able to have success within a year. If you're trying to, because you assume that somebody's already put something else in motion, getting something started where there's nothing is very hard to do. And, you know, often takes, you know, from my experience, at least 2 years to get done. So, you know, it takes a while, and you need a lot of patience. And sometimes success gets not just marked by what you stop, but maybe some minor part or some significant part, but not all of what you want. And there's a lot that is done by lobbyists. A lot of lobbying is simply explaining a client's interest to a member of Congress, particularly staff people. Members of Congress do not have the time, maybe don't have the brains, but don't have the time to spend on getting into the details. So, you know, they can understand things like Russia bad, Ukraine good, but when you get down to the details of commerce and things that could benefit you, members of Congress are spending all of their time raising money to get reelected, and not enough time, and not enough staff to get informed about details.
Okay, thank you. And the last question, I think it's interesting. What practice in other countries, for example, in Israel or in Poland, or the practice of lobbying, of soft regulation in European Union, on your point of view, is the best in new history of lobbying developments like institutions? So what countries are leaders in building of these institutions?
Well, obviously, our main trading partners, anywhere from Canada and Mexico to the EU, very, very effective. Um, very, there's a lot going on. Increasingly, in Eastern Europe, we're seeing that as well. There's a lot of people who just need to get comfortable with the system that we have, and also there's sometimes particularly in Asia, where they're reluctant to get involved because lobbying seems to be dirty. The word connotation is something that they don't like. But mostly the European, including East European countries and our other trading partners, business is what drives, most of us in one way or another. We're all trying to make a living, and so therefore, in the international sense, it's trade, and those who have an interest in at least trying to tell their story. And part of lobbying doesn't have to be for some specific regulation or some particular legislation, but it could be just to inform people more about what is going on in Ukraine and what Ukraine would like to expand, from the government's point of view, and from any business. It would be very useful because knowledge, it's better to have an informed person than an uninformed person in this country. And political power, my theory of political power is that it's like a shape of a pie. And if you don't occupy your slice of that pie, then somebody else will occupy it. And they will get their case, their point of view, whatever it is, across. So I encourage it.
Thank you. I have the last question because
It's okay.
Yeah. Okay. One question about public diplomacy, because we know that public diplomacy is important tool of lobbying, and for example, it's important tool for lobbying interest of Ukraine in European Union. Case with Holland and situation. Yeah,
Yes.
you know this case. So, what is the role of public diplomacy in lobbying process, and is it works in United States? On your point of view.
When you were saying public diplomacy,
Like
is it
promotion.
Go ahead.
Like promotion national idea, like working with NGOs, working
Okay.
with diaspora and so on.
Yeah. Very important because let me give you the example of a company, and not a country, and then I'll get back to your point. If I'm a company and I am doing good things, I'm making airplanes that defend the United States. I'm going to be there talking about the great things that the company does. And I just have to say, look what is good that is going on. Look what is our progress. Look what we've done over the years. We've been a good partner, good citizen. Now a country, same thing. I mean, we need to know more. Unless Russia invades, we don't see it. We are so very focused on our domestic issues, always have been. So therefore, from a lobbying point of view, we need to have people who are telling the Ukraine story, and being able to tell it in different ways to people who are key decision people. And you just are able to figure out who that is fairly easily. It's obviously in the executive branch. You want to be able to say both in the State Department and in the Department of Commerce, but in Congress to, pardon me, to the people who are on, serving on committees, foreign affairs committees. And you don't have to have something you're asking them to do. Don't have to have it at all. In fact, they like that. And they like it. You know, when I come into somebody and say, I just want to inform you about something, don't have to ask you to do anything. Sign a letter, sponsor a bill, vote for this. Oh, yeah, let me listen. You know, I like to do that.
Yeah. So we're trying to do community of promoters of Ukraine who have practice in government relations in Ukraine. So what's your main advices to our Association of Government Relations Professionals in Ukraine, and your advices to active Ukrainian people who work in public diplomacy in their own way? So how we can be more effective than we are now?
As an association, as
Yes, as community of professionals and political
community.
consultants.
I think
Yeah.
forming an association, an organization, and I know this has been done in Croatia and some of the other countries that have had to deal with domestic issues of corruption and also it's post-Soviet Union era. And for the most part, they form an association of lobbyists among themselves. And they discuss professional issues, maybe adopt a code of ethics for lobbyists, maybe bring in people who are experts in Ukrainian experts, or from elsewhere in Europe, about different issues, and find ways to, in essence, promote the professionalism of those who do lobbying. There's a lot going on in the European Union in lobbying, and I know it takes different forms in the parliamentary systems than it does in our system. And so, you know, definitely in Europe, we've all got parliamentary systems of one kind or another. And lobbying is different in a parliamentary system. So looking to other countries in Europe who have lobbying associations, maybe they can help.
Yeah, we work with Public Advocacy Association in the European Union, this Christian Day for You. So we work in this way. So
Okay.
Mr. Marlow, thank you for your time, and I hope that we can organize one more webinar, maybe for 1 hour, and because we have more questions from our society, maybe in some months, if it's possible. Because
we're both figured out our problems, technical problems.
Yeah, and webinar it will be better, I think. But it's this discussion was very interesting for our community, and thank you one more time for your time, and have a nice day in DC.
Thank you, and good. I don't know what time of day it is there now.